looking for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next is public comment. Public, you have 3 minutes to comment. Undersheriff, you have somebody in your pocket with you that wants to comment, or?
No, I do not.
Okay. Public comment is closed. Moving to committee items, the minutes from the May 8th meeting, they're not showing up on mine. Not sure if anybody else has minutes there. I kind of doubt it. I'm sorry? I'm on minutes and there's nothing on mine. Okay. Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next up are appointments. And first up, we have the Department on Aging Advisory Council. We have 2 open slots vacant. One that we have an applicant for is the term expiring December of 2018, and Carrie Good is the applicant. And we'd be looking for a motion. Motion and support to send Carrie Good's name on for the Department on Aging Advisory Council. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. We'll keep advertising for the second open slot. Retirement Board, 1 general pension member, and this is a chair appointment. It's Marcy Wendell's former seat, and Denise Owens is the applicant, and that's to forward on as the chair's appointment.
So moved.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Sanitary Code Board of Appeals, public members. We have the main contractor appointment. Leland Preble is the current member and the applicant. Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. There's no alternate yet. Moving on to the well driller main seat. Charles Sebastian III is the current member and the applicant.
So moved.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Well driller alternate is remaining open. Community Corrections Advisory Board, 1 public member, media. It's a vacant slot. John Hummer is an applicant. His application was added late to the agenda, and John Hayes is also an applicant. I will point out that it's a media appointment, and John Hummer appears to be media. I didn't see that John Hayes necessarily did, unless I missed it on his application somewhere. Is there support? Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next is the Enterprise Group, Blackman LDFA and Parma LDFA semi-annual reports. Amy, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning, everyone. You've got the reports. I think on the Blackman report, I'd like to point out to you that although Technique bought the property, the remaining property in the LDFA, they have requested an extension, and that was granted by the LDFA. They have some other projects going on, and they requested an extension because there is a requirement for commencement of construction at a certain time. So that extends that until, it's an 18-month extension. I don't know if that I have the date in there. And then conversations are underway as far as extension of the LDFA, so that is ongoing. Any questions on Blackman?
Amy, just one note on that. I sent an email again this morning to Pete asking if there's anything new on that. So
Okay.
hopefully
good.
we can
Thank
prod
you.
that along.
Okay, and I had a conversation with him Friday, and
Good.
I think he's going to follow up on a couple of things. Thank you. And then on Parma LDFA, bids were let for the Phase 1 for the lift station improvements. And there's a Phase 1, 2, and 3. So when that is all completed, the lift station improvements will be prepared out there for future development to handle additional capacity. And other than that, we don't have a lot of noteworthy things to discuss.
Commissioners, any questions of Amy? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have the equalization biannual report and the L4029 tax rate request. Ruth, good morning.
Good morning. Let's address the 4029 first. This is just a standard request for tax rate that you process every year. There are no changes this year. We did not have a millage reduction fraction, so everything is the same as it was last year. We were not able to add the Lifeways millage this winter, but everything else is the same, so I would request that you forward that on to the full board for a vote.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions on the L4029 from Ruth? And if not, we'd be looking for a motion to send that on. Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Ruth.
Okay, our biannual report you have in your packets. Excuse me. We are still working on, we're still working on our procedures manual, updating all of our procedures in the department. Right now, all of the appraisers are out in the field, so will probably be on hold for the next couple of months. This has to do with our 17 goals and where we're at with those. We plan on scheduling a continuing education class this fall here. We usually do 1 or 2 a year. We've been working on standardization with all of the databases, all of the local units. That has gone very, very well. Equalization was much smoother this year. We did not have nearly the balancing issues that we've had in the past. So, and all units now are on .NET. Not all of them have gone through the standardization procedure that we had the class for last year. Like the city, I know the assessor at the time just didn't want to deal with it, but the assessor who is there now plans on doing that. So that really helps in processing and balancing, and when we're all kind of using the same terminology. One of the other things that we've done is we purchased all new maps from our GIS department. We did have to send out to get those printed, but we went through a really thorough quality control process afterwards. Did find a lot of errors, not so much in the actual data of the parcel, but more in the information layer where labels are duplicating or labels are over important information like meets and bounds descriptions. So, we've marked those all, given them back to GIS to do the corrections, and so they're working on that. And some of it has to do with some of the scripting, and now that they've got a new GIS person there, he should be able to address some of those issues too. So we'll be getting together for a meeting on that. The city has requested that we handle their splits and combinations this year. That is a really good change because we get a lot of, obviously, people coming in and wanting information about their property. And we've always had kind of a hole in our GIS layer where the city is because they took care of their own GIS and it was not part of our GIS system. We just kind of fit it in as well as we could. And we didn't have the background information, so we would often end up having to send residents to the city to get the information that they needed. So, we did have some discussions with the assessor and let him know that they would have to convert their data to our parcel fabric layer, what we use. And he did get approval for that project this year. They're hiring InfoGeographics to make that transition, and so once they get that, all of those parcels, migrated over to the parcel fabric layer, then we can pull it into GIS here seamlessly, and we'll have one, nice map of the whole county. AMR reviews are going to be July 12th and 13th. This is the recheck from the AMRs that we had last year. Our county did quite well overall. We had a couple of units, 4 units that had some significant changes that needed to be made. So anyway, the Property Services Division will be in on the 12th and the 13th to do those checks. And I kind of gave you some of the background of what they found when they were here before. We're working on kind of continuous process improvement for our appraisals. I said in my report here, attached, please find the Department of Treasury Property Services Division review for our work for 2017, but I failed to attach it. So I sent those to you. It looks like this right here. I sent those to you this morning. And it's just a report of our, basically our sales, studies, and appraisal work. And overall, they were pleased with them. They said that they were well supported and seemed logical. They had a couple of notes for us, so it was nice to get a written report this year. Our technology upgrade, I was working with IT on trying to get us tablets to use in the field. Everywhere I checked, no one is really well, Oakland County is using them for equalization. They're not super happy with it. Kent County right now is starting kind of a pilot program with it. And I think what we ended up coming up with, talking to Don, is that we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get one tablet PC, use it in our assessing units, which are kind of in our outskirts. And so if it'll work there, it'll work anywhere. But there have been some limitations, so I don't want to, spend the money to, have them for all staff and then find out that they're not really going to meet our needs. I put the calculations in here for you on the CPI thus far. We're still at 2.17. We've got another 5 months to go, so it looks like next year is going to be a better year unless everything tanks at the very end here. I put in a lot of information about the department, where we're at. To date, we've performed 147 residential property visits, 75 agricultural property visits, 81 commercial property visits, 13 industrial property visits, and 2 developmental. And that was a couple of weeks ago, and they've continued to be out. About 500 land divisions to date. And everything else is pretty much on the same curve as it's been for the last couple of years. I did include at the end of the report some legislative proposals for you just to keep you informed, and included that information on the big box legislation. It has been reintroduced as HB 4397, and this is the legislation that is basically trying to put some fairness and uniformity into the calculations for taxable value. When you look at our big box stores versus our whole commercial class, you see that that big box stores have gone down astronomically, as much as 75% in taxable value, where the rest of our commercial class went down about 6%. So, it has to do with a particular way that they're appraising these properties. My organization, MAA, has filed amicus briefs in both the Court of Appeals and in the Supreme Court. We just filed one in Supreme Court. So we're hoping that the Supreme Court won't hear it. We did get a really good ruling through the Court of Appeals, and we're hoping that will stand, and they won't, they'll continue to remand. The ruling was basically, if you looked at the ruling, it went almost hand in glove with the legislation that's out there. Basically that the tax tribunal, when an appraisal is done, you have to use the same highest and best use as the current use. And what they were doing was comparing a brand new, going interest building with old dark stores that have been shut down for years, that have deed restrictions that you can't do anything with. They turn into a a roller rink or an industrial facility, or break it up into tiny little spaces for like a flea market or something like that. And of course, that does not have the same value, but that was the comparison. And they just really didn't follow the rules of appraisal. They kind of let them slide. So it basically lays out, it shouldn't have to, but it does. It basically lays out for them what they have to do. And in the Court of Appeals, they remanded back to the tax tribunal with very specific instructions that they have to consider the cost approach, that they have to get the deed restrictions adjusted, because the appraiser basically said, you know, I didn't adjust for the deed restrictions because I didn't find that it was necessary. That he interviewed the buyer, and it didn't matter to the buyer. Well, the buyer bought for pennies on the dollar and was going to convert it to a different use. If, you know, a buyer that wanted to use it for the same highest and best use, that deed restriction would have mattered. So basically, that's what they did, is they gave them a guideline and sent it back to the tax tribunal. Now they are, you know, going to the Supreme Court asking to be heard there and asking to overturn the Court of Appeals decision. So I don't think they've done oral arguments yet.
Okay.
Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions of Ruth?
Yes.
Chairman Chatwin.
Yes. That is the one, let me look here. Yes, this one extends, right now, the veteran's exemption applies to the principal residence only, and it has to be residential property. This would expand to agricultural land. If you had 200, 300, 400 acres of agricultural land, you could still get an exemption on all of that. It also extends to all adjacent land. So if you have 8, 10 parcels and they're next to each other, it extends to all of those. It also extends to the unremarried spouse if the veteran in question died before the law was enacted, but would have qualified if the law had been in place then the unremarried spouse gets that exemption. Also, if an unremarried spouse, if the veteran died during active duty, it extends to that. So it broadens the veteran's exemption hugely. Yep. The only one who's tried to do anything about that was Earl, and that went nowhere. And you know, when it first came out, that's what we argued, is it should be an income tax credit. That way anyone can get it, whether they're a homeowner or not a homeowner. It's fair for all veterans. But this is one of those that they brought out just before lame duck, 2 weeks, you know, rammed it through. Nobody really had a chance to vet it. And so, you know, now we have it, and who wants to say, you know, I'm going to change things, you know, or I'm going to be the one to vote against the veterans bill or whatever. I think a better argument needs to be made for fairness to all veterans. Right now, I think it's in, I don't know if it's come out of Brandenburg's or not, but that's where it would be, in Brandenburg's committee. I'm not sure whether they voted it out and it's on the floor or not. But it's the same one that they had before. They didn't get it through last session. Hard to say. You know, you don't know. You can't get that information from the veterans. Like Dave can let us know if we want to check on a veteran's application. He can kind of verify the information that we receive from the veteran, but he can't give us a list of veterans or veterans' spouses. So hard to know what, but we have seen many veterans kind of move up, sell their house, now they've got a house on the lake and whatnot, that kind of thing, because there are no taxes on it. Exactly. Exactly. Well, and there's other legislation that has been proposed that would allow joint tenancies. So the veteran doesn't even have to own all of the property. It can be a joint tenancy with other people, and it can be exempt. So, yeah, it could be a real mess. It could open up a huge can of worms. No, there was one piece of legislation out there that proposed that they do, but it's not ever gone anywhere. It hasn't even come out of committee. So, yeah. Anything else?
Commissioners, anything else for Ruth? Okay, thank you. Next up is the undersheriff with the resolution to switch selective router providers to Peninsular Fiber Networks. Undersheriff Cool.
Good morning. As a matter of housekeeping, I just want to point out that I see the correct document did not make it into the agenda. Delane kindly fixed that for me. I also emailed it out to you. That document is really just a deeper dive of what we talked about at the study session. Follows the format that the board has requested. There's not anything additional within that document that we haven't talked about. Based on the study session and the question and answers there, which were very good questions, I appreciate all the commissioners coming forward and taking this as a serious item and digging into its understanding. If there's any additional questions that have come up, I'd be happy to answer those. Ultimately, we're looking for the forwarding on of this motion to the Board of Commissioners at their full meeting for consideration and hopefully approval.
Commissioners, any questions of the undersheriff proposal that we saw? If not, we'd be looking for a motion to send it on.
Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Parks, Jeff. Good morning.
Good morning. It's beautiful out there and hot. So this is hopefully the last item in the development of the splash pad. We need to communicate to our constituents and the public, and there is not obviously any sound equipment on what previously was the outside south entrance to the Cascades. So this allows us to put those pieces of equipment in place. We added on because we have 30-year-old technology currently for our sound system inside the Cascades. So we went ahead and took a look at the entire system comprehensively. As I told Mike and the county chair, we had a number of complaints last summer because the kind of equipment you used in basically it's a loudspeaker or speakers, and 30 years ago that was the technology, and you just throw the sound out there for everybody to hear. So suddenly I was getting calls from city commissioners and individual residents, city commissioners on behalf of individual residents 3 and 4 blocks away from the Cascades, complaining that it sounds like when we're operating, it sounds like the music is inside their living room. Well, with modern technology and proper sound engineering, you actually can increase the sound quality inside the Cascades, but point it very specifically and control it so you'll hear it there and literally stand outside the Cascades, not next to the fence, but a half a block away, and you won't hear anything. And that's just the advancements we've made, like everything else in technology over 30 years. So this modernizes the system. It has to sync, the sound has to sync with the lighting system. So that adds some cost because of the light show we do every night and have done since 1932. So this is so I want to point out, you all probably noticed, it's a sole source. That's because there are very few sound engineers particularly in the Midwest. We're lucky enough that there is one here in southern Michigan that does the Civil War muster, works with MIS, BC Sound and Stage. It was the Civil War muster who directed me towards them. We sat down and met with them, comparing to other projects and properties that I called around and talked to. Seemed like a very, very fair price, actually lower than what some other folks have paid for similar equipment. I did plead poverty when I met with them, so I was squeezing them for everything I could.
Jeff, my only comment, I did a quick search and I found at least one other sound engineering company in Michigan. They were out of Livonia. So how wide a net, or how do we determine who a bid request goes to?
Yeah, two things. There are lots of sound equipment companies. It's the individuals that work in their background. The gentleman, Adam, who I spent a great deal of time with, has a strong background in sound engineering. I didn't want to just hire a company and who knows equipment. It's great that you know equipment. I needed understanding of how we were going to design, because every venue is unique. No two venues are alike, so I needed to understand and know that the person was competent and could design and show me how they were designing the sound to manage and control it so that I didn't have problems down the road. So if there is someone out there and I miss them, I apologize, but I looked at the Livonia company. I looked at some local, even more local companies who sell equipment, but again, that's a lot different than the skill set that you need to manage a unique. Cascades is unique, trust me, there's not, as you all know, there's nothing like it. And I didn't want to, one of the issues we were having, without getting into a lot of detail, is that we have a high and a low. So we've got speakers at the top too, and those are the ones that tend to throw the sound. You're at one of the highest points in the Jackson Urban Center, and you're throwing sound, and yet we need sound up there as our customers go up. And I need to manage that sound at one volume and concentrate it. And the downside with the current system is when I'm managing that, then you can't hardly hear the system in the lower level, particularly on a fireworks night or family night when you have a large amount of white noise from people talking to each other in conversation. You can't actually hear the sound that goes with the light show on the lower level because you're trying to manage the upper level so you don't upset your neighbors. So this allows us to manage all those pieces, direct sound, and now we have a sound piece obviously on the outside of the Cascades that we have to, third piece that we have to manage, and its volume will be different because you have a lot of running water and you got to be able to communicate with folks. You got to be louder without throwing it clear across the park. So that's why.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we hold it out, but this company, it's a sound engineering company, and they list a list of projects that they've done. Sounds like some are similar to this, but I think you're on a tight time schedule too with this one,
apologize.
right? Yeah. Okay, we'd be looking for a motion if the commissioners are so inclined to. This gets approved here, does it not, Mike? Below 20,000? Yeah. Motion and support. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
God willing, this thing will be operating by Friday.
23rd? Yep. J.C. Dot, Culver and Paving Projects. Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Well, you have in front of you the basic information. We had 11 responses on these projects, and we're recommending award as described in our motion requested. Happy to take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions of Chris?
I just had a question about the location, the Springport Road. I guess I don't understand where that's at. Like, can you provide us with maps?
Oh, certainly can, yes.
Especially since they've changed like Springport and Crawford Road and stuff like that.
Sure.
I couldn't figure.
I'll have the team pull together a location map and email it to all of you prior to next week's board meeting.
Chris, my only question, I think this is the one where I went through and looked, and you've got one of them doesn't have the low bidder, and that was because you thought that it would be quicker getting the work done if you awarded it to the next high bidder? Is this the right group that I'm looking at? It is. I'm seeing a nod from the back of the room.
Yes, yeah, just confirmed by looking in the information I have, yeah.
Do we think that's fair to the bidder? And have we checked to see, I mean, granted, if you've got one company doing two and then one doing one, maybe you get it quicker, but do we know they don't have enough crews to comply with your time requirements, or is it just your experience that it's going to go faster by splitting it up?
By what? Excuse me, the last?
Is it your opinion that it's just going to go faster by splitting up the bids? Because the one was only off by, I think, $200 or $300, if I remember right.
I can verify that with the team. We do generally vet that out carefully and ask questions of the bidders about schedule and overall qualifications. We don't always go with the lowest bidder, as you know, based on scheduling and qualifications and the ability to do the project. Sometimes they have special requirements with erosion control and so forth, but I can vet that out and get back to you.
Okay, well, we can still vote on it because it goes to the full board, correct?
I'm
And-
confident that the answer you'll find satisfactory, but I can double check on that.
I just wanted to wave my arms a little and make sure we're doing the right thing.
Right.
And then the other last question for me, I think, is talking about the local match. It's in the narrative on the executive summary of it. So the total project cost is $444,000, and the final cost of the county is $231,000. My recollection is the county match was 70-30 typically, but that doesn't work out to that. Why is that?
Our share, see, on culverts, we're at a 50/50. that correct?
Okay, maybe that's why then.
Yeah, culverts has a special provision in local match policy. Go ahead, Bruce.
Sorry, and you already approved the 50/50 on Leora and
I was thinking that because of the
Moscow.
airport project.
2 or 3 months ago.
Okay.
And then the one project is a county primary, so we're 100% responsible for that at Blackman Road.
Okay. We can probably send these in one full swoop, you think? Okay. Be looking for motion to send all these on to the full board.
Move to approve the culvert projects as listed.
Motion and support. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chris, the engineering reimbursement.
Thank you. This is something you see every year, and it's fairly straightforward. You have all the information in front of you. You have 3 professional engineers and myself, Angie Klein as your director, and Corey Clevenger as your senior civil engineer. So the final form submitted will have all 3 of us listed, and you just need to have a minimum of 1 in order to qualify for the $10,000 reimbursement. This has been something that's historically provided as part of Act 51, and you'll see this every year. It's very routine.
Okay, looking for a motion. Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chris, MDOT contract for Robinson Road improvements.
Yes. What you have in front of you is the standard template contract, the boilerplate. Looks just like all the other contracts we review and approve for Robinson Road, which we're hoping to get underway with construction here shortly. So we just need this approval to move forward.
Looking for a motion. Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chris, monthly report.
Thank you. Just a few highlights. You have the full report in front of you, but I wanted to just highlight the first item, Rives Junction Road Pathway. Our agency's been trying hard to be sensitive to the context of our projects. So here's a situation where we're designing a trail, and we wanted to try to save trees. So we put out notices on some of the impacted properties that if we were going to save the trees, we needed to have easements to curve the trail and realign. But some of the residents were in opposition to that whole idea, but we did hold the meeting, and you were there. So we heard the input, and now we're in the stages of continuing with design. So we're at the I just want to emphasize that we're at the early stages of our project. We're seeking that community input as promised, and doing the best we can to balance all the myriad factors for projects. So did you have any feedback or thoughts on that meeting?
Just one comment, Chris. I was going to ask the question when I was there, but a resident did, and it was about not just answering the question on who was going to take care of that, especially in the winter, but codifying it in an agreement. And the schools apparently have offered to do that. But I think for the benefit of the commission that we should certainly have that codified in writing so that 10 years from now, we're not arguing about it.
Correct. We should memorialize that, and that has been the plan. It is one of our project tasks for that.
How long has the school agreed to take care of it?
Well, yeah, probably in perpetuity, but I think mainly they're talking about snow removal in the winter.
Yeah.
Which is what the residents were concerned about, having to go out and shovel the path in front of their house. I'm not sure if that carries over to maintenance of it. Is this going to be a bituminous or asphalt path?
I believe it's planned to be asphalt at this stage, so it'll need some crack sealing and other maintenance.
I know that Blackman Township's DDA in the past has done either a 10 or 15-year maintenance agreement when it comes to the sidewalks and those programs, and then returns it to the homeowner. I just wonder if it's an idea, is it a good idea to talk about perpetual snow removal, and 20 years from now, all of a sudden we're talking about replacing asphalt and everything like that also, and the burden appearing on the schools.
Well, but the fact is that you have a number of residents that are opposed to it to begin with, for whatever reason. I think because of the closeness to the road of their house, and they're worried about privacy issues. I support the trail. But they've raised that issue. It's a 10-foot wide path, and, it's a legitimate question for them if the schools are willing to step up and, maybe not the maintenance of it, but certainly the snow plowing of it. I don't think there's any harm in that part. And we're still a year out, I think, by the sounds of it, correct?
We are, for construction.
So there's certainly time to talk through all those issues.
And this is a looming concern for all kinds of trails as we continue to build non-motorized pathways, which are an amenity for our community. I think that goes without saying. But Jeff and I have had talks about the park system and their trails and JDOT's role in helping with maintenance and what that is. Traditionally, we were a road commission. We only did roads. That's sort of shifting and changing, and that's true statewide. So.
Again, Dave, if I may. Christopher, if you're going to strategically look at the trails we're going to be doing on a continual basis, I would seriously consider some of the very low maintenance item type trails. I know that Dahlem put in place a Trail for All that is made out of limestone mix with pine sap. And you and I can do the maintenance versus having to hire a paving company to fix holes and gaps in the trail. And it has stood up very well to the Michigan climate. And if you get any heaving or rising, again, it's very easily repaired versus, an asphalt trail needing $15,000 to $25,000 worth of work to make a stretch better again. Just a thought.
Yeah, good thought. Is that used primarily more in rural areas? I am familiar with limestone trails in general and so forth, but.
This is designed and they use it on a lot of the trails. And it's bio-friendly.
Great. And you said it was pine sap, kind of as a binder and holds the dust together? Yes, that's good. Thank you. Ann Arbor Road Pathway, I just wanted to share with you all that we've had changes in the engineering team. We know this, and some of the work that was done by our prior engineering group did not pass the muster with DEQ. So we've had to retool the design and resubmit for the permits. We're in the process of doing that now and expediting things as quickly as we can. And I'll be sending out an email update on that for you all. We're working on that today, actually. So I know you had asked about it, Carl, and we'll get some information to you on that. So, but the team is working diligently on that. Michigan Avenue Bridge, I just want to alert you that we're having problems getting approvals from Amtrak, which is not unusual. They're taking a lot of time, and we're at a time-sensitive phase, so we're talking to MDOT about options because it's been too long. We're frustrated, and so stay tuned on where we can go with this. We're at a point now where the project's going to be pushed out another year if we can't get Amtrak approval here very soon. Any questions on engineering before I move forward? No? Okay. Stakeholder project communications, I want to give some good news that we are receiving, when we pull the data on Facebook, we're getting 2,000 to 3,000 people on certain posts following us and reading the posts and sharing. So that's very encouraging in our attempts to communicate with the public at large. We do monitor the comments that come in, and we try to respond and answer questions when possible. The Paint a Plow program is successful. Northwest has, I think just this last week, late last week, had completion of the first plow, or near completion of it, so we're very proud of that. And you'll see those on our plows in the winter months. And we hope to keep this program going year after year. And we're reaching out to the school districts to try to get that in the program next year, so we'll have more and more of these. I think our ultimate goal is to display them out front at JC Dot there on Elm, and maybe out at the area garages as well, so that people are reminded year-round what we do for them in the winter, and we can display community pride. Operations is all described in detail here, but just a couple of quick things as we're ahead of schedule with our work. We are struggling with manpower. We do have a good number of our crews in on Fridays and Saturdays working overtime right now. And it's a deal where we're making hay while the sun is shining. So the weather's been cooperative, so that's one big reason we're ahead of schedule. But I just wanted to share that it is taking a lot of overtime to do that. And we will be coming forward here as soon as we can with the Phase 2 manning request. I just want to share with that. We hope to get a better work-life balance with our employees and make sure we have adequate crews on staff. And lastly, the chipper hitches, the photo you see, are being installed on the new trucks. We're going to get delivery of our new chipper and the 2 new distributors this week. And this involves a new method where we're going to basically close a road briefly and chip the whole thing in one shot. That's going to save materials because you don't get the overlap at the center line, which also degrades over time. You get a nice uniform application. And then secondly, the time efficiencies are amazing. You get off that road and you move on, and you can do many more miles per day while you have your trucks hauling and so forth. So we're looking forward to saving a substantial amount of money on our chip sealing operations this year. There is going to be a learning curve, so we won't be at full optimization, as Bob cautions me, but I think we're still going to see that savings this year. Happy to take any questions.
Commissioners? Steve?
Can you talk about where the 2 railroads are going to meet on Park and Horton Road a little bit? Pat?
Yes, the pathway. We've talked with the City of Jackson. We're trying to collaborate on a better solution for the safety of pedestrians and so forth on the pathway where it crosses this dangerous intersection, which has a history of accidents. So we've realigned, we have an exhibit that I can email out to you if you haven't seen it yet, where instead of Park crossing Horton at the angle, which is always difficult and challenging for motorists, where we tee up both of those intersections, and then the trail will cross in a much more it follows best practices much better. So there'll be cost sharing on that, and you'll see that proposal of what our share is after we get that figured out. We did meet with the township, Summit Township, last week, and began discussions on that. But we're excited to work with the township and the city on things like this. So is there more you wanted me to share on that, or that's kind of the latest? It's coming. Right. And one of the roads is a primary, so we do have an obligation to have safe intersections on a primary, so we view that as our financial responsibility to do the realignment for a primary road. It's something on our list anyway, so now we have the perfect opportunity to take care of it. Anything else?
There?
The project on Parma Road, do you have a date, a tentative date when that's going to be reopened?
Well, last week when I got. Tentatively be done by.
It's taken a lot longer for the water to go down, and so as soon as the water's down, they'll be able to work on it.
All right. Anything else?
Chris, I just wanted to thank you for that updated press release on Cooper Road.
Sure.
Appreciate, and I think the public appreciates a little bit more information on it, so I know it took a few minutes to do that, but
Well, no. I sincerely appreciated the feedback, because you were absolutely right that there is confusion on that project, potentially. With 2 failures, and when did they happen, and why are they delayed? We face a lot of pressure when we get a failed culvert, because we can literally go out and get that culvert back in within 24 hours, 2 days or so, but we're just not allowed to because of the permitting. And I am working in the background to talk to DEQ about a streamlined, maybe global permit where we can at least get a road open, and then maybe there's more review time. The risk there is you might have to put in a different culvert, go back and dig it up, but at least the road can be open in the interim. So I'll be continuing to pursue that at a high level, but on a staff level, can't do it, is the answer we get, and so stay tuned.
Okay, is Bob going to cover more, or are we all set with your report?
We're all set, unless
Okay.
you want to hear from Bob.
Nope.
Okay,
I think the chair is.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is claims.
Move to pay the claims.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. No other minutes. The July reporting schedule is there. Takes us back to public comment. Hello, public. No public, no public comment. Committee member comments.
Mr. Chairman,
John.
I'll be sending a note to the chair, letting him know that I'm going to be resigning from emergency management. They meet quarterly, but we changed the date of the parks meeting, so I have a conflict. So I'll be requesting to stay on parks, but to leave emergency management.
Okay, thank you for the notice. Other commissioner comments? Hearing none, we're adjourned.